So we discussed question number 58 and there was some confusion about question number 58, whether the correct answer is C or A. So let's go read the question first. So the question says your company standardizes on Windows 10 Enterprise for all users. Some users purchase their own computer from a retail store. The computer run Windows 10 Pro. You need to recommend a solution to upgrade the computers to Windows 10 Enterprise. Now read the sequence. First, you need to upgrade the computers to Windows 10 Enterprise, then join them to Azure AD, and finally install Microsoft Store apps. Okay, so three tasks you have to do, right? Upgrade the computers to Windows 10 Enterprise from Windows 10 Pro. Then join the computers to Azure AD and then install Microsoft Store apps. Right. Now the solution must meet the following requirements. Ensure that any applications installed by the users are retained, right? And minimize user interventions. Now the easiest way, if you see, okay, what is the best recommendation to achieve the goal? Now you have to choose one, right? Whether is it Windows Autopilot. So Windows Autopilot, this is incorrect because you see that the device is not yet connected to Azure AD and not enrolled in MDM, right? In Intune. So if the device is not connected to to Azure portal and is not enrolled in Intune, that means you cannot use Windows Autopilot. For Windows Autopilot, the prerequisite is that the device must be connected to Intune, right? So option A is incorrect. Now Microsoft Deployment Toolkit is can be an option, and then Windows Configuration Designer, provisioning package, and Windows Deployment Service. So which one is correct? So if you see, it is more like an in-place upgrade. It says you need to, uh, you need to recommend a solution to upgrade the computers to Windows 10 Enterprise. So first you need to upgrade from Windows 10 Pro to Windows 10 Enterprise. And remember, we discussed this in one of the previous questions, which is an in-place upgrade. So it is a kind of in-place upgrade. And for in-place upgrade, we can securely wipe and back up the data and restore it on another computer. So it's the same thing. So Windows Configuration Designer provisioning package is the best option in this case, because with this option you can you can do an in-place upgrade. Yeah, so the correct option is C. Here 40% would goes to A, but A is Windows Autopilot, and Autopilot cannot because the devices are not yet joined to Intune, are not enrolled in Intune. So without Intune enrollment, you cannot perform Windows Autopilot deployment. Yeah. Now, question number 59. We said in the previous questions that you can set these settings in password policies in Azure portal in Azure AD, but in Azure AD, if you go to the password policies or password properties, you cannot do that. So it's not being configured from which is says you need to ensure that users are prompted to set up a 6-digit PIN when they join Windows 10 devices to contoso.com. And the solution is from Microsoft Intra Admin Center, which is Azure AD. You modify user settings and device settings. So this is incorrect, but I added to the solution that it can be done from Azure AD, but I was wrong, and from Azure AD you cannot do these settings. So let me show you. Where was let me go to Intune, sorry, to Azure AD. So I'm gonna go to Intra Admin Center, and if I go to Intra Admin Center, users, all users, and let's say I want to create a new user. So in create a new user, you give it the name, and in you see password, auto generate, and account enabled. So here we can not see such thing. Also, if I go to the to the search resources and services, I also cannot find anything such as pin activation or Windows pin, whatever. You can't find any of these services. Even if you go to the password policies, uh, there we have password policies, password protection. In password protection we also don't see, you see there it's kind of policies. So lockout, you can set up the lockout threshold, lockout duration, custom length password, enforce custom lengths, all these things. But you cannot configure the 6-digit pin from there, but you can do that in Intune. So if you go to Intune, and Intune, let's go to okay, I'm gonna go to devices, and in devices go to enroll devices, and here you can see Windows Hello for Business. So if the question asks you that the settings are configured in Intune in Windows Hello for Business, so that would be correct option. So if you see here, let me so I click on Windows Hello for Business, and currently it is disabled, so let me enable it. And if I enable it, then do the required, and once I click on required, you see here, you can see that minimum pin length is 6. Now so from here it is confirmed that you can configure these settings from Intune in Windows Hello settings. Okay, so that is also no, because we cannot do this setting in Microsoft Intra Admin Center, which is Azure AD. Question number 60. So we were going to start today from question number 60. So if you see, it's the same question, but it's let's see what is the solution. So the solution says that from the Microsoft Intra Admin Center, you configured automatic mobile device management, MDM enrollment, which is MDM is Intune, right? So you configure the MDM enrollment. So now the devices are enrolled in Intune, right? And from Microsoft Intune Admin Center, you create an assigned device restriction profile. So does this meet the required does, does this meet the required goal? So again, it is no. Why? Because I told you, even though it says in Intune Admin Center, but in Intune Admin Center, you are not setting the Windows Hello or this pin, 6-digit pin from from by creating and assigning a device restriction profile. So the answer here again is no. Again, the same question, question number 61. And the solution here, it says from Microsoft Intra Admin Center, you configured automatic mobile device management. So it is confirmed that is added to Intune. Now let's see, from Microsoft Intune Admin Center, you configure the Windows Hello for Business enrollment options. And this is the correct option, you see, because I just showed you Windows Hello. In Windows Hello for Business, you can configure the minimum pin length, which we put here 6 digits, right? So, so this one would be A, yes, because you can do the setting from Windows Hello in Intune. Question number 62, it says that, okay, so this is, I would say, the hotspot or the case study question. So in these questions, I told you do not read all the whole questions. So straight away jump to the questions asked and then go take the relevant information from the question. So okay, now for this question you need to read this. Contoso must meet the following technical requirements. Because it says you need to meet the technical requirements, right? And which object should you create in Intune? So to meet these requirements, what should you need to create in Intune? Which object should you create in Intune? A deployment profile, an app protection policy, a device configuration profile, and or a compliance policy. So let's read this. Ensure that the users in group name group 4 can only access Microsoft Exchange Online from devices that are enrolled in Intune, right? So the devices must be enrolled in Intune in order to access Microsoft Exchange. Deploy Windows 10 Enterprise to computers of the Phoenix Office users by using Windows Autopilot, and create a provisioning package for new computers in the HR. Block iOS devices from sending diagnostics to telemetry data, and use the principles of least privilege when possible. Enable the user in marketing department to use App1 and pilot co-management for the IT department. So if you see, these settings are mostly related to devices. Yeah, there are some apps, but even though there are mentioned some apps that you need to give access to the apps, but it says again it relates to the devices, which devices our users must be able to join. I must be able to comply with these requirements. So for obviously you cannot do a deployment profile, because deployment profile is for installing Windows or applications or features. So deployment profile is not the correct option here. If you say app protection policy, so app protection policy might work here, but I would say not in these cases, right? Create a provisioning package and block iOS devices. Use the principle of released privileges, so an app protection policy also is not, um, I would say, a compatible option here, or applicable option here. Device configuration profile, like I said, mostly it is related to device configuration, because you see block iOS devices from sending diagnostic data, deploy Windows 10 enterprises to computers, again devices, provisioning package for new computers, again devices. So all of these are devices, and compliance policy is also not applicable. So the best option here is a device configuration profile. So if you create a device configuration profile, then you can achieve this goal or these goals, all of these. So the correct option is option C. Okay. Again, question number 63, hotspot question, and let me see. I think I mentioned here somewhere. Okay, yeah. So question number 62 and question number 62 to question number 66. They are the same questions. So go to answer area straight away and read only the relevant information from the hotspot instructions. So let's go question number 62. uh, Question number 62 we already did it. Question number 63, let's go to question number 63. What is the question? So answer area is device 1 is compliant, and device, so it is something related to the policies, whether devices are compliant or not compliant with the policies. So let's go to the policies, read the policies here, what the policy says. So these are the policies. um, Now policy 1 is for Android and policy 2 is for iOS. Policy 3 is also for Android. But if you see, policy 1 is for Android and is not configured. When not configured, that means is not required. Yeah, the policy is not required. The compliance is not required. Policy 2 is iOS, and if you see policy for iOS required encryption, so encryption is not applicable in iOS devices. So if not applicable, that means those devices will also be automatically compliant. In a policy 3 Android, and if you assign policy 3 to a device, to any Android device, so for that one it is required, and if the encryption is not configured on that device, so that device will be marked as non-compliant. So let's see policy 1. So policy 1 is assigned to group 3, right? First read the question. Device 1. So it is asking about device 1, whether device 1 is compliant or not. So devices are here. So device 1 is Android device, encryption is disabled, and is a member of group 1, right? Is a member of group 1. Now let's see to group 1 which policy is assigned. So group 1, the policy assigned to group 1 is policy 3, right? Policy 3, and policy 3 says that it is for Android platform and the encryption is required. Now if the encryption is required, policy 3 is assigned to group 1, and group 1, device 1 is a member of group 1, which is Android. So that means that device 1 is not compliant. Device 1 is not compliant. Why device 1 is not compliant? Because device 1 is a member of group 1, right? Is a member of group 1, and the policy 3, which says Android in the encryption is required, is assigned to group 1. So technically any devices in group 1 will need to have encryption, while here device 1 is in group 1 and encryption is disabled. So that means that device 1 is not compliant. Let's go to the other one. So the other question is device 3, whether device 3 is compliant or not compliant. So device 3 is a member of group 2 and group 3. Yeah, so device 3 is Android device. The policy is disabled. The encryption is disabled, and is a member of group 2 and group 3. And now let's see which policies are assigned to group 2 and group 3. So policy 1, sorry, policies are here. So to group 3 and group 2 and sorry, group 2 and group 3. To group 2, the policy assigned is policy 2, but remember there is a group 3 exclusion, and policy 1 is assigned to group 3. So policy 1 and policy 2 are assigned to group 3 and group 2. Now let's see, device 3 has these policies assigned. Device 3, let's go to find device 3. Device 3 is Android device. Yeah, device 3 is Android device, and the encryption is disabled. Encryption is disabled. So if you see policy, if you see that that is a member of group 2 and group 3. So group 3 policy 1, uh, policy 1 says that the encryption is not configured, that means not required. So in the first case the device is compliant, right? mm, but let's see for group 2. So policy 2 is assigned to group 2 and excluded, group 3 is excluded. So policy 2 is assigned to group 2. Let's find group 2 devices. Group 2 devices. So group 2 have, we have device 2 and device 3. So device 3 is a member of group 2 and group 3, and if you see the group 3 is here is excluded. So exclusions take priority. Let's do it this way. So device 3, sorry, device 3 is a member of group 2 and group 3, and the encryption is disabled. So look for the policies assigned to group 2 and group 3. So policy 1 is assigned to group 3, right? Is assigned to group 3. And let's see policy 1. Policy 1 says Android, right? Android and is not configured. So if not configured, that means not required, encryption is not required. And here it says that disabled. So even though if it is enabled or disabled, since the policy 1 says that encryption is not required, so it doesn't matter whether is enabled or disabled, the device 3 will be marked as compliant, right? And here is another policy as well assigned, which is to is also a member of group 2. So to group 2 the policy assigned is policy 2, but if you see policy 2 is iOS, is for iOS devices, and also it is not applicable. So in one case it's not required, in policy 1 it is not required, and in policy 2 it is not applicable. So this means that device 3 is marked as compliant, because in both cases, in like I said, in one case the encryption is not required, which says not configured, and in other case the encryption is not applicable, which because that policy is only for iOS devices. Now let's go to so device 3 is compliant. Okay, device 3 is compliant. Now let's go to device 4. If you see device 4 is iOS device. Now if you see iOS device, the very first instance you can see that for iOS the encryption policy is not applicable. And if you see policy 1, 2, 3, all are encryption policies. So if the encryption policy is not applicable, that means that device 4 is also compliant. So device 3 and device 4, they are compliant, but device 1 is not compliant. Device 1 is not compliant. device 3 is compliant and device 4 is compliant. Okay, so the same question. Let's go to question. Uh, okay, so it is about the users. What is the maximum number? What is the maximum number of devices that user 1 and user 2 can enroll in Intune? We have a table given for the users as well. To answer, select the appropriate questions. Now user 1 can enroll a maximum number of 5 devices, 10 devices, or 15 devices, or 1000 devices, or an unlimited number of devices. If you go by definitions, let's go to the user table. So you see user 1 is Intune administrator, right? User 1 is Intune administrator, and user 2, here in the table it says none, but if you see here it says user 2 is a device enrollment manager. User 2 is a device enrollment manager, so that means I can replace this none with device enrollment manager, DEM. So user 1 is Intune administrator and user 2 is device enrollment manager, right? Now the question is asked is how many. User 1 is, remember, user 1 is Intune administrator, so user 1, which is Intune administrator, can add 15 devices. So Intune administrator can add 15 devices, or can enroll Intune devices. Sorry, can enroll 15 devices, and user two is a device enrollment manager. So device enrollment manager can enroll 1000 devices into Intune, and I have explained here a device enrollment manager is a device enrollment manager account can enroll and manage up to 1000 devices, while a standard non-admin account can only enroll 15 devices. So yeah, so Intune administrator can add 15 devices, uh, while Intune device manager can add up to 1000 devices. Sorry, that's 10 devices. Intune, sorry, user 1 is not Intune administrator. Sorry, user 1 is not a normal user, is not a user 1 is an Intune administrator, while here in the explanation I said that a standard non-admin account can only enroll 15 devices. I'm wondering why a device an Intune administrator can aid less than a standard user, can enroll less devices than a standard user, but as an Intune administrator can enroll up to 10 devices, right? And that is, let me show you. I couldn't find relevant information how why an admin Intune administrator can add only 10 devices. But just remember, Intune administrator can add only 10 can enroll only 10 devices, while a device enrollment manager can add up to 1000 devices. Okay, so again the same hotspot question, and let's jump to the answer area. So policy 1, okay, so it says to which devices the policy 1 and policy 2 apply. So it's the applicability of the policies. which devices policy 1 is applicable to which device and policy 2 is applicable to which device. Let's see policy 1. So policy 1, that is quite easy. Let's see, is policy 1 is assigned to group 3. All you need to do is just check which devices are in group 3. So go to the device list, and group 3 has device group 3 has device 2 and device 3. So remember, device 2 and device 3 is a device 2 and device 3 is a member of group 2 and group 3 both, while the question is asking that policy 1 is applicable to device 1, device 2, device 3, or any of them. So if you see, policy 1 is assigned to group 3, and exclusion is none. So let's see, policy 1 is assigned, so group 2 and okay, group 3 only. And if you see, group 3 has two devices. Group 3 has two devices, device 1, sorry, device 2 and device 3, because device 2 is a member of group 2 and group 3 both, and device 3 is also a member of group 2 and group 3 both. So if you see, device 2 is iOS, and like I said, iOS, this policy is not applicable to iOS devices, so automatically device 2, the policy is not applicable to device 2 because the platform is iOS. Now it is applicable to Android devices, and we only have left device 3 in group 3, which is Android. So policy 3 is applicable to device 3 only. And if you see policy 2, so here the correct option is device 3 only. If you see policy 2, policy 2 is device 1 or device 2 or device 3, which device? So let's read policy 2. Policy 2 is assigned to group 2, right? Is assigned to group 2, and group 3 is excluded. So is assigned to group 2. So group 2 has okay, group 2, we have two devices again. We have two devices, group 2, and group 3 is excluded. So group 3 is excluded. So when group 3 is excluded, I said before, exclusion take priority. So that means that this policy 2 is not applicable to device 2 and is not applicable to device 3, because there is this excluded groups. So the only group to which policy 2 is assigned is group 2, which is device 4. So policy 2 can be and is also for iOS. So policy 2 is assigned to group 2, which is device 4. So the other correct option, policy 2, is device 4 only. Question number 67. Your network contains an Active Directory domain named contoso.com. The domain contains two computers. Now remember, this is something on local Active Directory. So you have two computers, computer 1 and computer 2, that run Windows 10. On computer 1 you need to run the invoke command. Remember, invoke command is used to execute commands on the remote computer. So it says on computer 1 you need to run invoke command to execute several PowerShell commands on computer 2. So the target computer is computer 2, and so it is asking that what should you do first. On computer 2 run the enable ps remoting commandlet. So ps stands for um, PowerShell remoting, and option B is saying on computer 2 add computer 1 to remote management user group. So if you add computer 2 to remote management, it won't achieve the goal, because if the PS remoting is not enabled, then even if you add computer to remote management user group, you still can't execute PowerShell commands, remote PowerShell commands. And from Active Directory, configure trusted for delegations on computer 2, so it's incorrect. And on computer 1, run the new PS session commandlet. So this one is used after you enable. When you want to get connection, you need to run this command, but before connecting to the remote computer, to computer 1, first you need to enable the PS remote client. So here the correct option is, because it says what should you do first in order to execute command on computer 2. So on computer 2, run enable ps remoting commandlet. We have a lab for this one as well. If you get a question in which says that if you want to start a remote session on computer 1, and in the question it says that PS remoting is enabled, so you want to start a connection, so then you use this command to start a session. Okay, now question number 68. Okay, question number 68 is, you have an Azure AD tenant that contains the devices shown in the following table. Device 1, 2, 3. Device 1 and 2 have Windows 11 Pro, and device 3 and 4 have Windows 10 Pro, and device 1 and 3 are Azure AD joined, but device 2 and device 4 are registered only. So which devices can be activated by using subscription activation? Now for subscription activation, you need to have the devices to be joined to Azure AD. If devices are not Azure AD joined, you cannot activate them using the subscription activation. So which devices are joined? Device 1 and device 3, these devices are joined. So uh, device 1 and device 3. So the correct option is option 3. Okay, question number 69. You have 25 computers that run Windows 10 Pro, and you have Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. You need to upgrade the computers to Windows 11 Enterprise by using in-place upgrade. So now remember, in-place upgrade, and in-place upgrade is done locally, right, on local Active Directory and local machine. Uh, the solution must minimize administrative efforts. So what should you do? What should you use? Microsoft Deployment Toolkit and a default image for Windows Enterprise, Windows 11 Enterprise, uh, Microsoft Configuration Manager, and a custom image. Remember, we discussed before that in-place upgrade does not support custom image of Windows, right? It does not support custom image of Windows and Windows 32 version, right? 32-bit versions and custom images are not supported by in-place upgrade. So option B is not correct, because it says custom image. And Windows Autopilot, so Windows Autopilot, remember I said in-place upgrade is not supported by Autopilot. Okay, and then subscription activation. Subscription activation is something that is related to Azure AD. Join the devices must be joined to Azure AD while we are doing an in-place upgrade, which is on local, which can be achieved locally. So Microsoft deployment, we are left with this one, option A, Microsoft deployment toolkit and a default image. Remember, in that question we discussed that the Windows with default image is can be in place upgrade, not the custom one. So this option A is correct one. Here says option D, but option D is, I said, subscription activation. It is when it is done locally, so we don't do any subscription activation or Windows Autopilot. So option A is correct. Okay, you use the Microsoft deployment toolkit to manage Windows 11 deployments. So again, locally, and from deployment workbench, you modify the Windows WinPE pre-execution settings and add PowerShell support. Now you have a deployment share. Remember we discussed this before. Um, a deployment share, and then you have to add what do you add yeah, task sequence. Anyway, let's go to, you need to generate a new set of WinPE boot image files that contains the updated settings. Okay, so it is again about the updated settings. So you created a, let's assume you created a deployment share, and then you need to update that deployment share. You need to so the deployment share is, you modified it like I said, and then you add, last time we discussed in the question, you you export a deployment share, and then you add a task sequence, and after task sequence you realize that you have to do some editing. You edited that deployment share, and then you added a task sequence again, and then finally what you did, you updated, you need to update that deployment share. So here it says that you need to generate a new set of WinPEX boot image file that contains the updated settings. What should you do? So from the deployment share node, update the deployment share. You see, obviously this is one, because you need to update it. Everything is done because it's mentioned in the question that you have done everything. Let's see, from the advanced configuration node, create a new media. We don't need to create a new media, we already have it. We already have a deployment share, so you only need to update that existing one. And from the package node, import a new operating system. Like I said, we don't need to create a new media or new operating system. From the operating system nodes into, no, again importing new operating system, we don't need importing new operating system or new media. So just update the deployment share and your goal is achieved. So option A is correct. Question number 71. You are replacing 100 company owned Windows devices. You need to use the Microsoft deployment tool to securely wipe and decommission the devices. The solution minimize must meet the following requirements. Okay, back up the user state and minimize administrative efforts. Now again, Microsoft deployment toolkit is used, so that means it is something related to local, not anything to the cloud. And also it is being said that securely wipe and decommission the devices. So it is again an in place upgrade. Yeah, so in place upgrade. Now, which task sequence template should you use? So standard task client, I have given this link here. If you go to this link, and if you go to this link, you will find all these details here. Scroll down and scroll down, please. So standard client task sequence, the most frequently used task sequence used for creating reference images and deploying clients in production. So could be something relative, but let's see the question. What in the question said this? The question said that you need to securely wipe and decommission the devices, which is something like in place upgrade, because you don't want to lose your data as well. And yeah, you need to back up the user state. uh, so what it says here, where was it? Yeah, standard client, we also have that option. Standard client replace a task sequence. So used to run user state migration tool. So there we go, we can achieve user state migration in standard client replace task sequence. Also backup, which is mm, securely wipe the devices, and the optional full Windows imaging backup action, and can also be used to secure wipe of a machine that is going to be decommissioned. Now you see that is clearly mentioned that you need to securely wipe and decommission, and that can be achieved in standard client replace task sequence. Excuse me. So option B is the correct option, standard client replace task sequence. Question number 72, you need to create an Active Directory domain. The domain contains computer name computer1 that runs Windows 11. Now when you need to enable the Windows remote management service on computer 1 and perform the following configuration. For the Windows remote management service setup, set startup type to automatic, create a listener that accepts the request from any IP address, enable a firewall exception for WS management communication. Which PowerShell command should you use? So connect WS main, enable PS routing, invoke action, or enable PS session configuration. So remember, it's the same question we discussed previously, and you need to enable Windows remote management service on computer 1 and perform the following configuration. So which PowerShell command should you use? So you can do these later, but first you need to enable Windows remote management, and that can be done by enabling PS remoting. If PS remoting is not enabled, you cannot perform these operations. Yeah, so to perform these operations you need to enable the PS remoting, then you can use these commands on the target machine. So the correct option is B, enable PS remoting.